That's a beautiful way to just go into the ritual of everything every Sunday. But so I'm excited to be talking about spiritual archetypes on Father's Day. And when I think about the divine feminine, I usually think about the principle of beauty. And so on Mother's Day, I usually talk about beauty and understanding that not everybody is a mother, but everybody has elements of divine beauty within them. And so today on Father's Day, I thought I would talk about the elements of the divine masculine, elements that we don't talk about very much these days. And to me, when I think of masculine in its most healthy form, I think of power, I think of strength, I think of courage, and I think of wisdom. And just like there is beauty in every soul, there is power, strength, courage, and wisdom in every soul. And one way that I thought might be fun to do is through the language of archetypes. And hold on, there's an issue with the screen real quick. Maya, could you just take that off of the iPad? Just click no. There we go. So when I think about the divine masculine, like I said, there is power, there is strength, there is courage and wisdom in every soul. And so one way that I thought it might be fun to think about this is through the language of symbolism and archetypes. And I want to be clear ahead of time that archetypes are not stereotypes. Stereotypes have to do with the human ego personality. Archetypes have to do with our soul and our soul's purpose. And a few months ago, I came across a series of recordings by Caroline Myss, who offered a 10-hour series on spiritual archetypes. And this was about the time that we were dealing with the storming of the Capitol, and I was trying to make sense of the world we were living in. What is going on with all of these men in trucks driving up and down North Avenue with their Trump flags and their big trucks? And what was the motivation to attack our Capitol? And I was thinking something larger, more subconsciously cosmic seems to be going on. And I am trying to understand the world that we live in today from that larger, more cosmic perspective. So coming across Caroline Myss and her perspective on archetypes was very enlightening to me, and it has helped me put some of the events of the last few years into a new perspective. Now, like I said, she has a whole book on this, and this was a 10-hour lecture, and so I'm going to be trying to, in a nutshell, explain what she's talking about in about 15 minutes. So keep in mind, there's always more depth to what I'm saying. So you guys are going to get a broader view, but the invitation is to maybe begin to think about your world and your life and ultimate reality in perhaps a different and maybe an expanded way. So when Myss describes archetypes, she refers to them as a spiritual tool. And she says, archetypes are the symbolic language of the universe. I like that, the symbolic language of the universe. Past the language of logic, past the language of language, comes the language of symbols. And it's in the language of symbols that you can understand or decode or can discern what heaven is saying to you, or what your dream world is saying to you. It's through the language of symbols that you reach the interior of your soul. I'm going to repeat that. It's through the language of symbols that you reach the interior of your soul. So when we are attempting to make sense of this world and our lives, Mace would say that one way to do that is through beginning to learn about and acknowledge our archetypal patterns. And in order to do that, we have to learn how to speak the language of archetypes. She says, and I want you to listen carefully to the truth of this in your own life. She says, when you have an experience that reaches a certain altitude of expression, you will automatically go from telling someone about it literally to shifting into metaphor. Instead of saying, oh, it was a street over here, you will then say, if it reaches an energetic experience, she says, you will now go into metaphor. It was like I was falling in love. It was like. You will lose a capacity to express it literally, and you will have to access symbolic language because you simply won't be able to function at the literal level in describing your experience. You simply won't be able to function at the literal level in describing your experience. So let's think about that just for a minute. For example, every year we take the kids to Glenwood Caverns, the amusement park on the top of Glenwood Mountain. I don't know how my microphone is doing this, but, and there, I don't know who all has been to Glenwood Caverns, but there is a big swing that goes swinging off the side of the mountain, and all you do is you look down and the drop is just, I don't even know how big the drop is, but you're just like looking down into space. And I've only done it once because I promised Danny I would do it with her. But I didn't say, when I describe that experience, I don't say, I was 2,000 feet in the air looking down at a 90-degree angle with shoulder straps on. I say, it was like I was flying. It was like my heart was going to jump out of my chest. It was like I was totally free for the first time in my life. And you see how we go into metaphor, we go into symbolism when we have that experience that transcends our literal mind. And what Mace is saying is that we can use this understanding to make sense of our own lives. Where in our lives are we repeating behavior patterns that don't make logical sense to us, but we continue to express them anyway? She would argue that when this happens, perhaps we are dealing with one of our archetypes. So now, in order for this to make the most sense today, I need to name that both Caroline and I are operating on a few premises. We're operating on the premise that we as human beings have a soul. Number two, I'm operating, and so is she, on the premise that we have more than one lifetime to work through these archetypes. And the premise that there is more to our ultimate reality than we can currently see with our five senses. So what I'm talking about isn't going to make very much sense if all of us as human beings only have one lifetime. If it's just one and done, there's no way, we're gonna just mess it up big time if we only have this one life to get it right. So sometimes it takes lifetimes to learn something as simple as the principle of patience, or genuine forgiveness, or unconditional love. And you don't just develop those attributes in a few decades of life. These are what I would argue are soul traits that I would argue take lifetimes to learn. Now, if you don't believe in that premise of more than one life and life beyond the physical senses, these archetypes still can make sense to you if you just go into the language of symbology. And so what I thought might be fun is to talk about some of these archetypes that that Caroline talks about. And like I said, she has 10 hours of this, but she is talking about a long-term soul approach in her work. She says the purpose of learning about these archetypes, she says the task is to spiritually renovate, to become a spirit, a soul with such stamina that you know how to walk into your world and empower it with a level of grace that absolutely renovates the very structure and backbone of the world you live in. You need tools to do that, and the language of archetypes is that tool. I just want to repeat that again because I thought that was a beautiful phrase. She says, you know how to walk into your world and empower it with a level of grace that absolutely renovates the very structure and backbone of the world you live in. Can you imagine what this world might be like if everybody was striving for that? That could be a whole sermon in itself. But so let's take a little bit of time to look at some of these archetypes. And I want to repeat that archetypes are not the human stereotypes that we can sometimes fall into. Stereotypes deal with human personality and archetypes deal with eternal soul. So how is this relevant for us today? I think that it can help us explain some unconscious behavior patterns in our own life. If there's a pattern you seem to have that you do over and over again, perhaps it's one of your archetypes seeking expression. And for example, one of the archetypes in my father is the archetype of the teacher. Not only was he a teacher by profession for 30 years, but it was always from the time we were little just ingrained in him that anything that we do, he is just always taking the time to show us how to do it better or correctly or the right way from the time that we were little, whether it was teaching us how to mow the lawn or driving a boat or learning how to throw a ball. He was there to guide, instruct, and teach. And even though he hasn't been in the classroom for 20 years now, he is still constantly guiding, instructing, and teaching his grandkids and the neighborhood kids because that's just who he is. He has the archetype of a teacher. Another archetype that I might think of would be the archetype of the scholar. A little bit different than the teacher. The scholar is the person who just loves to learn. And you can find them in the library researching and studying and can just name the facts and the history. And it's just in their soul and their spirit to want to understand the world around them, to study and to make sense of the world. And so she says that all of us, we have about 12 archetypes. 4 of them are all the same, and then the other 8 are unique to us, and the archetypes are unlimited. But 2 of them that I want to talk about today in regards to the divine masculine is the way that she talks about the difference between the knight and the warrior. And she would say these 2 archetypes are both archetypes of protectors, but they are just a little bit different. And I just want to give this example so how we can start to see the nuance of what it looks like. So she says, let's look at the knight. The lead characteristic of the knight is romantic. The knight has a mission. Chivalry is an aspect of the knight and not the warrior. And the knight is there to protect and guard and is doing it on behalf of the people that he is caring about. The warriors, on the other hand, are also there to protect and defend. And loyalty is an aspect of the warrior. You know, never leave somebody behind. The warriors, according to this, the warrior's highest task is not to go to war, not to go to battle. The warrior who doesn't fight and is merciful or finds a way to outwit and not fight then becomes the hero. And, you know, this just beginning to look at these larger archetypes has helped me kind of look around at what's going on in the world today. She talks about the archetype of the father. And the father's archetype is one of the carrier of wisdom for the family. Loving, devoted, heart-centered, caring and understanding emerges into the grandfather archetype. And you can see that she gives the example that you can actually see this in mafia families, you know, and the way that immigrants come and they hold their families together in this way. But what she would say is the problem is that every archetype also has a shadow side. And so what we are seeing in many respects today in our culture is the shadow side of some of these archetypes. And this is where the discord and the conflict comes in. So one of the shadow sides of the warrior is that they can become misled. And Ed Tick has an essay called "What is a Warrior?" And he describes this. He has done a lot of work with veterans and post-traumatic stress syndrome with veterans. And he does a beautiful job of describing the warrior archetype in both its strength and its shadow in this way. And he writes, a warrior is not just one who has been to war and returned. The warrior has been recognized as a basic ideal pattern of thinking and behaving and social role that has occurred since the beginning of time. Becoming a warrior is an achievement of character. And so a veteran with PTSD can use the ideal of warriorhood as a guide and goal for healing and growth. What are the characteristics of a warrior? The ideal warrior is assertive, active, and energized. He or she is clear-minded, strategic, and alert. A warrior uses both body and mind in harmony and cooperation. A warrior is disciplined. Warriors assess both their own resources and skills and those arrayed against them. A warrior is a servant of civilization and its future, guiding, protecting, and passing on information and wisdom. A warrior is devoted to causes he judges to be more important and greater than himself or any personal relationship or gain. Having confronted death, a warrior knows how precious and fragile life is and does not abuse it or profane it. Warriors are meant to play major roles in the lives of their communities, providing help in times of need and restraining rather than encouraging violence. They need guidance from others who have been through similar experiences, and they need to pass their values, wisdom, and experiences on to younger initiates. Ideally, during all phases of service, warriors interact with their people rather than remain separate from them. A society cannot be healthy without its warriors. And societies with a class of mature warriors to remind the leadership and the people of the realities of war are healthier, stronger, and less prone to violence. He ends saying, we need warriors. The call to veterans and a way to heal PTSD is to follow the path of the honorable returned warrior. And as I was thinking about this, I was thinking about One of the best examples of the balanced warrior that I've seen is the depiction of the warriors in the movie The Black Panther. And for those of you that have seen that movie, the warrior force is a strong, powerful force of women, and they are strong, courageous, wise, ready to protect, but never looking for a fight. To me, that's the ideal pattern of a warrior, and a reminder, this is not about men or women or our gender, it's about our soul's spiritual archetypes. And one of our World War II veterans who left us this year, Phil Ellsworth, who really, he may have been a soldier, but he, I believe, has the archetype of the poet in him. He wrote this beautiful poem telling the story one day when he was during World War II, when he came across face to face with a German soldier. They both looked at each other, neither one knowing if the first one was going to shoot. They kind of made eye contact and then they went their own ways. And he shared that meeting in his poetry, and it's called The Meeting. He writes, "Once in a contested place, I met a soldier face to face. We stopped and turned and walked away, both to live another day. I often wonder who he was and where he is and whom he loves, and if he ever sees like me, a soldier in his memory, or if before the end he fell, leaving me to only tell of our meeting face to face, once in a contested place." And so there is so much more to this. There is so much more that I could say about this. It would probably be 3 or 4 sermons. And ultimately, what it comes down to, what Carolyn Mace talks about, what Ed Tix talks about, and maybe we'll get into this, is eventually it becomes the divine masculine and the divine feminine eventually need to lead into a divine balance. And my hope, and I am optimistic, is that actually humanity is moving more towards this divine balance. Even though at times it feels like we're so far apart, I think that I'm very optimistic that that's where we're going. And that's why the discord seems so real and in our face, because we're understanding that we do all have these characteristics and attributes within each and every one of us. And I think perhaps this old paradigm of way over here and way over here is slowly becoming more of a paradigm of divine integration. And so as we think about that today, I just want us to take a little bit of time to think about that, maybe think about the world in a new way. And like I said, food for thought. And so our closing hymn this morning is "Let It Be a Dance," as we think about how do we integrate and balance all of those dynamics within ourselves.
Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you, through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let a dancing. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you, through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. nothing's wrong and nothing's right. Let it be a dance, let it be a dance, let it be a dance. Let the sunshine, let it rain. Share the laughter, bear the pain. And round we go again. Let it be a dance.
And Peg, I have unmuted you so that you can help us sing ourselves out as we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Go your way in peace, wander as you may. Blessed is the path you take. May love guide you on your way.